Welcome to Rock's Back Pages podcast. I'm Barney Hoskins. My co-host today is Jasper Murison Bowie. Mark is sunning himself in his Tuscan retreat, so sadly he misses the rare treat that is this week's special guest, Alan McGee. Welcome, Alan.
Hey, Barney.
Very good of you to join us today for what is essentially a Creation Records special.
Thank you.
We will also be hearing clips from an audio interview with Blur's Alex James and saying goodbye to Trini Lopez and Wayne Fontana. Alan, let's start by asking what your pop baptism was. When did you sell your soul to rock and roll?
Probably in 1971. And I bought Get It On. That was the first record I bought.
Nice.
Which, it sounds amazing, but the next one I bought was Chirpy Chirpy Cheep Cheep.
Yeah.
So you know, I was buying, I was obviously buying whatever was number one. And Get It On was number one the week before, and then it was Chirpy Chirpy Cheep Cheep. So I was buying the number one records. I suppose when I was about 10 or 11, and I kind of was fascinated by Matt Bolan, and I would do the thing that I think all the 70s kids did, would get the tennis racket out and, you know, play it being, you know, a rock and roll star, you know what I mean? And that's probably at that point, I kind of knew that would be the ideal thing to do, something in music, do you know what I mean? You know, I never thought I would end up a manager. I never saw that one coming, you know what I mean? Because I never really liked managers in the very beginning, do you know what I mean? But I suppose I've kind of found my little niche for putting records out and managing bands, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I had this sense that there was a little kind of coterie or gang of you guys up in Scotland who essentially shared tastes. Like Joe Foster obviously turned you on to important things. It's always interesting to me to read about this stuff and to think, well, it was exactly the same for me and people all over the country, that we were sort of, you know, we were getting into the Stooges and the Velvets and Love's Forever Changes and all this stuff. Can you describe how that little gang of people came together, Alan?
We essentially went to school with each other, Barney.
Right.
You know how the U2 story is it's like you know, it was a gang of guys that went to school with each other. Well, the thing that nobody really knows about the Creation story is very, very similar. I mean, me and Primal Scream all went to school with each other.
Yeah.
I knew all of them, bar Bobby, by the time I was 10. And then Bobby came in for Springburn, which was, I lived in Govan Hill, and then I moved up to Mount Florida. And they were fine. They were, you know, it was okay, but Springburn was much rougher. So Bob came in for like Springburn, and that was the connection, really. I suppose it was just, you know, we all were grooving on music. I suppose the real instigators of it, though, was me and Gillespie. Yes. To be honest, you know what I mean? Like that was two fanatics, because we would be on a Tuesday night at Ayr Pavilion watching Generation X in 1977. I mean, it was like, and we were like 15 and 14, so it was kind of mad what we were up to.
Yeah.
And in respect to both sets of parents, really, you know, although for different reasons, my parents didn't really give a shit where I went to. Do you know what I mean? It's just as long as I wasn't bringing the police to the door, which I never did. They didn't really care that way. Bob's dad was actually pretty liberal. And he's a good guy, actually, a big socialist, trade unionist guy. And he was a good guy. And as it all went on, and I got kicked out, Barney, at 16 with my old man. And I ended up staying with Bob's dad and Bob for about a year, and then I got a little bed set at 17, But, that childhood was good, though, because I was, for different reasons, like Bob's parents were like letting him have an experience. My parents were like, get out of the house. But it didn't really matter because I was still having what I thought was a good time. And I look back on it and think, that was incredible. Being able to go to Ayr at 15 to see Generation X was great, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And now I'm mates with these guys, like Tony James and Billy Idol, and you get talking to them and you go, oh, we were in your dressing room, and they don't believe us. They think we're just making it up. We really were.
Alan, one of the pieces that we're featuring on the homepage is by Neil Taylor, who was the guy that introduced a lot of us to, obviously,
great
Jesus
book.
in the Marriage.
Great book.
I mean, and these pieces really stand up well, I have to say. So this is great. But it was interesting to me to read this, I guess was the first interview with the Married Chain in NME. And Jim Reed talks about Postcard, and he says that Glasgow sort of wanted just to kind of keep it at that level. and it just like endless kind of postcards, and of course it didn't happen anyway. And it's interesting to me that you broke away, that you obviously decided you had to go to London. You went to London.
Yeah, I did.
I don't know how quickly things started to happen for you. I imagine initially it must have been difficult.
Yeah, it was.
The Living Room, I think the first gigs at the Living Room would have been around this time of the year, like August 83.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
I mean, you were a great hustler. I don't know if you even remember this, but I actually was assigned to interview and write a piece on Creation. I'm glad you're looking like you don't remember. I hope you don't. Because we actually got in a bit of an argument in Covent Garden. You were traipsing around with the Jasmine Minks, and you had it was a bit like Kim Fowley, you know, with all his like acts. And I thought, oh, who is this? This is the new Malcolm McLaren giving it large talk. And we just got really pissed off with each other. I walked out, and then Bruce Dessau ended up writing the piece that I should have written.
But I see. In a way, you know, I mean, that whole thing that I was into was just, when you're young, you don't really believe you can be the story. You don't really believe you can actually be Alan McGee or Barney Hoskins or blah, blah, blah. So you think, you know, if I copy Malcolm McLaren, I'll be... and you just look like a fucking dick. But some of that stuff was good because it was so mad. Like, when I was managing the Mary Chain, it was like, I really thought I was Malcolm. And it was, some of the moves were quite mental. Do you know what I mean? It was like, we had a riot, Barney, and rather than hide the band, I went and got the TV crew and filmed the riot. And that was the best thing that ever happened to their career, because it went worldwide. It went viral before things went viral. That was on the news in Canada and America, and we ended up touring North America because basically I had cleverly me being Malcolm went, film the riot, and they did. Yeah,
absolutely. In the Bruce Dessau piece, which was published in late 80, you must have done this interview with Bruce in about October 84.
I haven't seen him in years, man.
He became like a comedy critic, didn't he?
Right.
But there's a great quote in this, and it just made me think of, like, obviously how Creation was so different what was going on. Everything was like bouncy synth pop and haircuts, and not everything, but and Creation was and you say Jesus and Mary Chain are the shock troops in this war on pop. You gotta love the rhetoric. They'll smash down doors which more subtle bands like The Loft and Jasmine Minks will discreetly sneak under. Well, I guess that didn't happen, but the Jesus and Mary Chain was like an incredible event. And listening to like Upside Down again, it's like, oh my God, this is a new kind of punk rock, isn't it? And it's just extraordinary sonically. So things really changed with the Mary Chain, didn't they? That was like, I remember thinking, right, this guy actually does know what he's doing.
Well, you know, the truth is, though, that Mary Chain record, they deny it. If you ever interview Jim and William, they'll 100% say I'm lying. But I was there. So this is actually what happened. They came down to play their first gig. They had sent me a demo of Upside Down, right? It was like the Ramones, Barney. Have you ever heard the Upside Down demo? It's kicking about the internet.
No. The real thing is enough for me, I have to say.
Yeah. It's just like the Ramones, the demo. They sent me that, and I thought it was pretty good, but I didn't think it was great because it's not. It's just a pretty good song, right? And they came down, and they'd never played a gig in their lives, no matter what they tell anybody. They'd never played a show, literally, not even under another name. They had been in their bedroom for 5 years. Yeah. And they plugged in, and Joe Foster was on the mixing desk, which actually meant nobody was on the mixing desk because he's mad, right? They plugged in, played too loud, and it fed back. Because the Mary Chain are actually deeply mental, they just carried on. So the whole sound check was that noise. And then nobody really, because we quite liked it, we never told them really. We just let it go, because usually we would try and sort it out. because they were so crazy, we were like, let's sound better with the feedback. Let's just go.
Yeah.
That became their sound. And when we done Upside Down, we recorded it. Joe produced it. Joe did the first mix. And it was a bit tame because the Mary Chain actually deeply felt an affinity with the first recording, right? Which was the Ramones. Yeah, because Williams, Bay City Rollers Ramones guy, that's where he was at that point, right? And we went, no, it's not mental enough. And I went in with William, and William got all the sonics right. And I did the feedback, right? And the feedback went between 9.5 and 10. The whole song.
Yeah.
That was where they got their sound. We sent them back, and for about 10 days, the Mary Chain said, we don't like it.
Yeah.
And then it was like Douglas and Bobby liked it. But and Bobby wasn't even in the band at this point. I think he was just about to get involved with them, right? But Douglas was on board, Bobby was on board, I was on board. And eventually I kind of had one call, I think it was with Jim, and I said, just trust me, they'll go for this. And we put it out, it properly explodes, doesn't it? And if you had to ask them, did any of that happen? I'm pretty sure they'd say none of it happened. But that's how they got the sound. It was just, we knew a band that sounds like that is going to explode. And we've actually got it sounding the way it's going to explode. Just go with it. Yes. And eventually they went, okay.
Well, thank God you did. I mean, it's a bit like Joy Division and Martin Hannett, isn't it? They didn't like Martin Hannett's sound, but without it, would we be talking about them today? You know.
Yeah. I was just going to say it's interesting that generally in this interview with Bruce Dessau, where you talk about the music business being sick and creation being the medicine.
Listen, I was full of shit. Don't worry about any of that stuff. He knows me. Barney knows me, though. I mean, I'm like this now, and I kind of was like that then. It was just an act. I was just being pompous, and it sort of worked. Do you know what I mean?
That's what you have to be at 24, 25, isn't it? Really,
a little bit.
Kicking against the pricks.
Yeah.
You mentioned Bobby, and obviously Primal Scream is already like a reality at this point, even when he's standing up and drumming in rave bands with the Mary Chain.
Yeah.
If we fast forward a little bit to the end of the 80s, when creation has already really made its mark, and Primal Scream, evolves into something different from the kind of, sort of British Paisley Underground type Birds influenced band that they were. And tell me about that Screamadelica, and what Primal Scream became.
Well, the first album was exactly like you say. It was like the Birds. It didn't click. They were pretty good at that, to be honest, with Jim Beattie playing guitar. And then they made a mad move and they decided to become the New York Dolls, right? And they were really righteous about that one, man. But that went on for about 2 fucking years. And the last year of it, they were on tour, right up before Loaded. They were on tour for about a year. And the audiences, Barney, were getting crazy, right? We'd started about 1,000 people in London, and we were finishing up about 200 people in London at New Cross. Do you know what I mean? We were on that trajectory. They were going down. In the middle of all that, in 88, 87, 88, I started going to acid house clubs. And Throb, 100% was not buying it. Bobby was interested on a level. Innes was interested on a level. Do you know what I mean? And so I was going to these clubs for about 4 or 5 months, and then we'd phoning them up. Because we'd all had broken relationships with people. So we were kind of living out each other's pockets. And I'd phone them at 4 a.m. from Manchester, going, what a night. And, and they were curious about it. And then Happy Mondays were playing at the Zap Club, I think it is, in Brighton. And I took Bobby and his girlfriend along. And we went into the dressing room and bought a load of E's off of Sean, who was basically serving up. Me and Sean go back to 87, so it's inevitable that I was going to manage him, because I used to go up to hang out with the Mondays in Manchester. If I was up in Manchester, I'd be hanging out with them for the weekend, and I'd go in and see Sean and go, "Oh, give us whatever," and we'd do a little thing, and then Sean gave Bobby one, put one in his mouth, and about 20 minutes later, Bobby went, "It's not worked." And we were thinking, you're up, you're not. And he went, no, you're not. So Sean went, boom, put another one in, and then that was it. He was like dancing. He was like this mad kind of like scarecrow fucking Ramones fan in black leather trousers and winkle pickers at a fucking Mondays gig, bummed Mondays, and was dancing. And that was sort of the beginning of Bob getting into it. And then a year and a half later, Screamadelica happens. But when they weren't insincere, but they still getting it really early. It was like 88, they were getting into it. Do you know what I mean? And then 89, they were just out the whole time, you know. Mm-hmm. And Loaded came about February 1990, so they were big time into it, you know.
They were, absolutely. I mean, sadly, we don't have time to talk about all the incredible acts that you signed in that period. You know, some of my very, very favourite records, obviously, bandwagon-esque, I still absolutely adore. Rereading one of the pieces that we're going to feature sort of reminded me of the whole Alex Chilton thing, and you say, I think you're telling Max Bell in Vox. So this is 10 years after you formed the label, and you're telling Max about nearly signing Alex Chilton. And I listened again to like Alcoholiday. What an incredible track that is.
You know, the end of the 80s, I'd become good friends with Alex. I don't know why it ended up I never signed him. But this is how close I was with him, Barney. Alex used to phone me up at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday morning in London, in Hackney. I go, Al, can you move my gear from Minneapolis to Philadelphia? And I'd do it. And he wasn't even signed to me. And I'd phone some courier up and go and pick Alex's gear up. It'd be $500, okay. And he'd do it. And that was that's how intertwined I was with Alex Chilton. And he wasn't even on my bloody label. It was completely mad. He just phoned me up and go, can you move my gear? I'm like, all right, I'll do it for you. Because I loved Big Star. I absolutely loved him.
Yeah. What is lovely.
He's a good guy, Alex. A good guy.
Strange. I mean, a perverse person in many ways. My God. But so bandwagon, and then of course, you know, Loveless, the mighty Loveless, the extraordinary Loveless, the extraordinary Kevin Shields, the album that of course, you know, notoriously, and I'm sure this is just wrong historical information, but you know, it's always gone that the album that kind of not broke creation, but almost bankrupted you. That led to
nearly bankrupted. I mean, it's a strange one. That I mean, I love that record.
Yeah,
but it was a really difficult time because, you know, I loved Kevin for it. He was just so single-mindedly going for the classic record. Was he? I really think he was doing for a classic record. He was just going, that's where I'm going with it, you know? I mean, it was painful to be the underfunded little label he was signed to. Do you know what I mean? But at the end of the day, we get the glory. I mean, 30 years later, it's somebody that I respect, like yourself's going, what a record. So it was worth it, you know what I mean?
Yeah. We put together a creation playlist on Spotify. Tragically, the only bloody Valentine song on Spotify right now is Only Shallow. But at least it's Only Shallow, right? Because it was on the amateur soundtrack, as I'm sure you recall.
Yeah, he probably hates Spotify if he's not on there. He probably hates it, you know. I don't like Spotify on a level. I mean, I don't like it that it pays such shit money to people.
Absolutely.
It's absolutely, and they're going to, in years to come, Barney, they're going to look at this and go, we're going to look at, you know, the way that they say people are, you know, like Ellen DeGeneres, is that what her name is? Yeah. And everybody's going, and she's getting cancelled now because she's a shit boss, right?
Yes.
Well, Spotify are eventually going to get the same cancelled. They're going to get cancelled eventually because basically they're treating the musicians really bad, man, you know?
Yeah, no argument with that. Would you agree, Jasper, as a member of the
And I think one of the other problems with Spotify is that it doesn't matter who you listen to, your Spotify money just goes to the majors. Like, even if you never listen to anything that's come out on Universal, they're still getting your money because that's how the system's set up. So it makes it impossible for small labels to actually get any money out of it, which is shit. And hopefully they'll change it, you know, given time. Maybe they'll see some sense and, like, you know, so that you listen to, say, a Creation 23 single on Spotify, a percentage of your subscription will go there. So that would improve things a little bit, and I think there are movements towards that. But as it is now, it's fucking terrible.
Yeah.
Shocker.
In the Max Bell interview, it's actually so perfect timing because you have just signed Oasis at this point.
Yeah.
This is April '94, and you literally just seen them in your hometown at King Tut's Wawa Hut. It's really it's lovely. I always love seeing quotes like this when no one at this point has any idea what is going to happen. This is going to be the biggest band in the country, and you're so excited. We know the story that you went to see your band 18-wheeler at King Tut's Wawa Hat, and Oasis were third on the bill. It's just a great quote that I'll read it. You say, by the time they did their version of I Am the Walrus, I decided to sign them. And you say to Max, the music is a cross between the Kinks, Stone Roses, and The Who. And the cover of this tape, which is incredibly rare, is important because it's a Union Jack going down the toilet, which sums up our country at the moment. I don't want to herald them too much, but they're already one of my favourite groups. Seeing them is what seeing the Stones must have been like in the early days. Brutal, exciting, arrogant. Love it. So, yeah, and I don't really what to say about it. I mean, I don't suppose even anyone could have had any idea that,
I didn't know. I just thought they were good.
Yeah.
But I mean, do you remember that record I put out by Trash Monk at the end of the 90s? Do you know that record?
Yes, I do.
That's a world-class record. They sold 30,000 round the world.
Sure.
Kevin Rowland, My Beauty, sold 20,000 round the world. We've put out loads of records that just went under the radar, no problem. Do you know what I mean? Trash Monk's worth a look at it. Oasis had zero idea it was going to blow up. No idea, Barney. I thought we're going to be a big time indie band. And I thought, if we're lucky, we'll be... I didn't even think it was Primal Scream. Do you know what I mean? I just thought it was a good band.
Yeah.
What did I think it was? It was like, I thought we might get gold record. That was it. That's 100,000 copies. We sold 65 million.
Bloody hell.
Yeah, completely.
So, you know what I mean? There's a reason that, I can sit back and just do my little indie records because it's like I had Oasis, do you know what I mean? And thank God I did, do you know what I mean?
Inevitably, I mean, just so happened we had this audio interview with Alex James lying around, Alan, and I thought, let's be cheeky. It's either going to piss Alan off or he'll... he's mellower and I'm mellower. I'm sure you can stomach listening to a couple of quick clips of Alex James talking. We can just talk about that whole insane kind of culture war around.
I quite like him, to be honest. I think he's a bit misunderstood. I think he likes music.
Well, this is an interview. I mean, actually, he comes off as a pretty nice guy. You can take the piss out of his pickled cheese and stuff and all of that, and his lambs. But he's quite a sweet-natured fellow. It's an interview done in 2007 when his autobiography, A Bit of a Blur, had just come out. He was promoting it. And he's riding around in a taxi in London with You Magazine's Maureen Payton, and he's being very cheeky. We'll just hear the first of those clips.
It's like you're living on the fucking front line. It's like a war zone. All these huge sort of explosions of kind of hedonism and sort of huge crowds of people everywhere you go, and ridiculous things happening, enormous amounts of to keep a sort of a top flight rock and roll band running. I mean, it's ridiculous. Costs a ridiculous amount of money and infrastructure and people. So it is kind of. And that's the thing. I think that what is not every unusual things happen all the time, but it's just the rate at which they happen when you're in a band. It's like you're constantly being accelerated and dragged around, and no time to really dwell on it.
Confidence is a preference for the habitual voyeur of what is known as. A morning suit can be avoided if you take a route straight through what is known as.
Yeah, so, I mean, in many respects, I'm sure, Blur's experience wasn't so different from Oasis' experience or your experience. It was suddenly this thing that was almost like out of control, incredibly exciting, but out of control.
But yeah, I never had any. I never had that. The real truth is, Barney, and the only ones I really know in that band, I know Alex a little bit. I knew Alex at the time quite well. I always knew Damon, and I'm now pals with Dave. I know him a little bit. And I was big mates with Andy Ross. I used to go to football with Andy Ross, and then I'd like go for dinner with him and all that stuff. Yeah. So Creation and Food were always cool with each other. Do you know what I mean? And I love Balfi. I mean, Balfi's just a legend in his own time. So I was totally cool with that mob. Oasis because they can't help it, that's just the way they are. When they went into battle, they hated them. They truly hated them. So when we went to number one, some might say, and because I was mates with Damon, I said, "Oh, you can come to that number one party." I invited Damon. So Damon and Alex came. I think Graham came as well. They all came, and they came literally to say, "Well done, Oasis." And the Oasis started on them, and that was, Liam started on them, and that's where that's kind of the beginning of it. Do you know what I mean?
But it worked out quite well for both. The whole media circus.
Yeah,
made
I'm not
it
against
massively...
it. I'm not against it. I mean, it could be. I mean, people bought into it, and I've got on the national news. I mean, the real beneficiaries of that were Oasis, because Blur. Nobody in our camp would actually acknowledge it, but Blur were 4 times bigger than Oasis when we went to war with them, right? And they won that singles race, but their album was an okay album, and the Oasis album was like it had all these hits on it. So do you know what I mean? I mean, it just we were the one that got the rocket launch off the back of that, you know.
I mean, did you feel at the time that the media was partly trying to stir up a kind of culture war, this kind of absurd like north-south divide thing? I mean,
it was a little bit, but that was Steve Sutherland, wasn't it? I mean, Steve Sutherland. remember he put on, like, I haven't seen Steve for years, but remember he had the 2 different NME covers, and there was an Oasis one if Oasis had won, and there was I mean, that was just it was kind of crap. I suppose it added to the whole thing, you know.
Reading the 80s pieces on Creation, it did occur to me that in a way the seeds of Britpop were kind of planted there, weren't they? Because there was very much this sort of philosophy of like, fuck America, fuck REM, you know, fuck. I mean, I know you like the Rain Parade, but you know, Neil Taylor's being very propagandist about this in his pieces. It's kind of like, you know, we need to champion these British upstarts, and the music press is kind of enthralled to all this just long American shit.
Oh yeah, back in the early 80s.
Yeah. The long ride or whatever. I mean, whatever bands you choose to mention, you know.
Yeah, Neil played a big important role in the launch of a lot of things. So because, I mean, the Mary Chain were good enough. It was a brilliant band.
Yeah,
but it was a lot of it was the only thing that wasn't by accident with the Mary Chain was William Reed's songwriting, who's a bona fide genius, basically. Do you know what I mean? But everything else about Mary Chain it's a bit like how I say to you how they ended up getting that sound. It's kind of fluke.
Yeah.
And like if Neil Taylor hadn't come along and went, "This is the new Sex Pistols," what would have happened? They'd have probably been the Bambi Slam. Do you know what I mean? It was just the right time. The right thing at the right time blew it up, man. You know what I mean?
I think you're right. So I think luck always plays a huge
sometimes
part.
You need disruptors. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Luck is always, I mean, just fortune and flukes and luck and just sudden left turns that nobody planned. I think you're absolutely right. Just go to to sort of conclude the Creation part. Actually, I'll tell you what, let's just hear the second of the Alex James clips, because this is him obviously a few years later, and he's living in the Cotswolds and having tea parties with David Cameron and all of that. And I mean, to his credit, he's very self-deprecating. He's not someone who ever took himself very seriously. Let's see what he has to say as a gentleman farmer, Jasper.
And it's very hard to let go of something that's been that good. But the point is, it's such a different thing being in a band when you're 23, and all you want to do is get pissed and fuck and play your guitar really loud. When you're 38 and married with a family, and you know, it's still great, but it's not the sort of vocational. And it seemed ridiculous how, you know, that is not what I would want to do now, is get on. I mean, I still want to do it, but I don't wake up thinking, you know, where am I? I wish I was on tour like I might have done 15 years ago.
I love the way he says, well, I still want to do it. It's like,
Does he really?
I don't know. His wife obviously wasn't listening then. I suppose she might be listening now. But, I mean, yeah. I mean,
you know what? I think it's very difficult for people like that, because they must look at the big bands like your Oasis or Metallica, and these bands, the Foo Fighters. That's a good point. That's a good one to talk about. It's like these bands they're just never really off tour. I mean, Oasis toured for 20 years. Do you know what I mean? They were always on tour. And Blur, really, if we're calling it what it is, Damon's got Gorillaz. Damon's got his solo stuff. He's got the Africa Express, and probably every 5 years he does 9 months with Blur. So if you are the other three, it's probably pretty frustrating. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Last of the three pieces is by your fellow Scotsman Keith Cameron, and this is when obviously you know creation comes to a kind of crash. Keith Cameron is writing about the label's achievements, and you know what it prompted in me was, I suppose, to ask this question as a hypothetical question: what if you hadn't sold 49% of the shares to Sony? Do you think what might have happened if you hadn't done the deal with Sony in 1992, Alan?
I'd love to tell you the romantic one, but we'd have went bankrupt. Do you know what I mean? They saved us. As much as that pains me to admit that, they fucking saved us. Do you know what I mean? But it is doing the deal with the devil, because you've let them in, and you know, like, and it's not really about the money part, although towards the end that became a problem, really, because you know we were making a lot of money at one point. The last 5 years of the 90s, we were making lots. We were turning over 40 million a year, which I don't know if that's in now money, but it's always a lot in the 90s, man. So maybe you'd have 8 or 10 profit off the 40, and you had to give Sony half. So it'd become a problem, Barney. Being Scottish, I didn't like it. But no, it's not really the money. Where it's the problem is, they slide into your business, and it's a hidden hand that's controlling you, really. And by the end of the 90s, they had moved in a lot of people, you know, under the guise of professionalism that they controlled. So the only two people left that were in, really, was me and Dick, and everybody else was ex-Sony or ex-major record companies. Yeah. And that's how they were controlling the label. You know what I mean? And when I put out the Kevin Rowland record, I was talking to Dick about this last month, and Kevin's putting that record out in Cherry Red.
Yes, I saw that.
I remember going for a marketing meeting, and none of these people would admit what they said at that meeting, but they were just basically saying, it's disgusting. Do you know what I mean? They're like, what are you doing putting this record out? He's a cross-dresser, which he's not. Blah, blah, blah. And I went out and I just went, that was one of the things that went like that with me, Barney, and knocked it over, was I was a bit like, it's fucked. We're basically, we're in business with a bunch of squares. We're fucked. Do you know what I mean? That because I thought, it's Kevin Rowland. You should just let him do what he wants. I mean, I knew that when I saw the sleeve that we weren't going to sell 250,000 records or a platinum record off the back of it, because I knew that Britain wasn't at that place you could accept somebody dressed like that. But you have to basically take a big call and go, it is Kevin Rowland. He's one of my heroes. It's why I run a label. Because when we got that money, when it really started happening right for us, I think I had 8 million to sign whoever I wanted to sign, Barney, right? So who did I try for? I tried for Neil Young, and Neil Young was heavily signed up. with Warner's, was never leaving. Then I tried for Paul Weller. I think it was $5 million to sign Weller.
Right.
And he wasn't even out. He was like, there was 2 albums in front. I had a meeting with John Weller about it, and he said the ballpark figure, if you want it, they wanted to come, to be honest, was 5. And I thought it's too much. I love Paul. So I offered 2 and I didn't get it. And it went to Andy McDonald's new company. So the third one, because I could sign, with $8 million, man, you can basically sign it just about anything in the 90s, like anybody, right? And then I just thought it was Kevin Rowland was the third person. So I was only signing my heroes by that point. You know what I mean? I was like, and John Lydon phoned up around that time, because I know John. And John said to me, we should work with each other, possibly Mr. McGee. And I was like, I couldn't sign John, because I just thought, if that goes wrong, God, I can't, you know, that, yeah, a little bit like he'll kill me, but not even that. Just like, I've got a great relationship with him. How you doing? And I don't to start putting these records out and get it wrong, possibly, because I knew that our business by that point had been taken over by the Squares. And I'm not being horrible to these people. They're nice people, but they got exposed in the Kevin Rowland record for being. They should have been working. They should have been bottling beer or something. You know what I mean? They should be working. Do you know what I mean? It was the wrong business to be in, because our business is freaks. Do you know what I mean? You know that.
Randall, such a pretty face should be dressed in lace.
Alan, if I mention the name of the late David Kavanagh to you, do you bridle, or do you what? I think you were pretty unhappy about that epic.
No, the only reason I was unhappy, I don't care. It's a pretty good book.
Yeah.
But the only reason I would go, I don't even bridle. I just like it's a shame he died, right?
Yeah.
Basically, I totally took him into my confidence.
Yeah.
And I let him do that book. I didn't say I've got like editorial rights to it. I just write the story. And then about a month before it went in, he said something to me. It was really snide, and I realised he's just trying to get his own thing off the ground. And Nick Hornby, that was who he really wanted to be. And he said to me, blah, blah, blah. You know, I said, oh, it's pretty funny. He went, yeah, it's a black comedy. And he was really snide the way he said it. And I went, I'll fuck you for that. So then I went out the next day, phoned Paolo Hewitt, went, do you want to do a book in creation? I went, yeah. And I went, you better get it out in 2 months. There's another book coming. And that's how I fucked him.
Yeah. I mean, I thought Kavanagh was an extraordinary writer.
No, he's brilliant. He's brilliant. But I totally fucked his book because he was trying to be snide to me. I just went, okay, fair enough. Sure. I come from Glasgow. I'm a much snideier bastard you'll ever be. I let Paolo do that fucking book, which is okay. It's just Paolo. Yeah. But there'd be 2 books coming out about the one person within a month. We just killed the book. So that's how I done it. But having said that, I don't hate him. I'm just saying to you, he's a bit snide because if he'd just done the book with an open mind and an open heart, I'd have been fine about it. You know, because I don't think the book's that bad. But because what he was trying to do was take the piss at creation on my expense, however you like looking at it, right, and then set himself up to be the next Nick Hornby, which his next book was him and his story. Where did he come from? Derry or something like that? You know what I mean?
Yeah, Northern Ireland for sure. Yeah,
and that was what he was trying to do, and he didn't pull it off. Do you know what I mean?
He was a difficult fellow. I can imagine him saying like black comedy and perhaps not meaning it to be taken like that. But I did read it. I thought it was pretty incredible, and there were blackly comic elements in it. Yeah. It was pretty epic. I mean, it was incredible.
The joke is, his book could have been the film. I would have let it be the film.
Right.
But because he was so snide about it, I was like, I'll fuck you for that. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And it probably did disturb him that I had ended up writing my book. And my book was more about my childhood, really, ultimately. And that's the film. You know what I mean?
Exactly. We've got 5 minutes to hear about Creation 23, which is 2 years old. You've got a release coming out every remaining month of this year. So tell us about Creation 23.
It's kind of hobby label, and I'm just putting the records out. I'm doing it all off me and my iPhone. You know, I think it's kind of going quite well. Do you know what I mean? I think we've put out something like 17 singles. I don't know, at a certain point, maybe we'll become an album label, but then I'll probably have to find a partner and do it with. Do you know what I mean? I had a guy, Barney, doing it, but he was, we'd managed some bands like Mary Chain, Wilco, Johnson, Cast, Las Vegas. We'd done pretty well. Do you know what I mean? Mondays. Do you know what I mean? So we'd done really well with the management, and he was in as my partner in Creation 23. And then I think we were both about 10 grand down at Christmas, and he pulled out because it was losing money. And you're a bit like, at one point with Creation back in the 80s, going into the 90s, I was like 1.2 million in the hole of money that was never mine in the first place. Mm. So you can't do little labels based on you're trying to make money. Money will come if you do good work. Do you know what I mean?
Reading the press release that I got this week, it just took me back to the dawn of creation, literally. I mean, the names of the bands, the whole kind of attitude and aesthetic. It was kind of like, does it feel a bit like that? Obviously, it's very different. And as you say, running off your iPhone, which you weren't doing in 83.
It's quite punk. I mean, I've done away with the contracts. That was Simon, the guy I was working with, and like, it's like just bands don't fuck you. Like companies, distribution companies, lawyers, they fuck you. Like, like little bands don't fuck you, mate. Do you know what I mean? So I'm not doing I'm not doing the contract thing. It's just a 50-50 deal.
Yeah.
It's interesting what you say about do good work and the money will come at some point, because that kind of happened as well with Pop Tones, right? When you decided that Creation wasn't, and then Pop Tones was struggling for a while, and then suddenly the Hives were just briefly the biggest.
Pop Tones
biggest
was crazy, guys. I'll tell you the story in a little bit. I think about trying to go, but it went on the AIM market, and I was told it was going to have a valuation. They thought of the professional people that was hiring at £300 an hour to tell me what the weather was like, right? And they said, "Oh, it'll probably be like 6.5 million valuation." I went, "Really? Oh, that's fucking great." Just go up, McGee, and have a meeting with these people up in Manchester. And they define for the AIM market what the valuation is. I don't know what these people are called, but I went up and I sat in front of this board of people. And I came out, Barney, and I got a phone call later on. And they spoke to them and went, "It's amazing. You must have, I don't know what you've told them. They love you." And I went, "Oh, what? But you've got a valuation of something like 9.5 million. I was like, "I haven't released a record." So now we're valued at 9.5 million. I haven't done anything. And then it went on AIM, and it jumped from 2 to 275 in the first day. So it went up again. I think within the first week it was valued at 14 million or something. No, 17 million it was valued at. And I hadn't released a record, so of course it failed. Do you know what I mean? I mean, it didn't fail because it's still about Pop Tones. But it didn't, it was a bit like, where is it taking Creation 15 years to get to that stupid set? I hadn't even released a record and it was worth 17 million. And I was like, this is fucking mad. And I don't think I'm really, because you've known me forever now, Barney, since the living room. And I'm not a businessy guy. I can do it, but it's not really my forte. And I was like, it was too much, I think. I'd just come out of Oasis thing. And then I was like, I was suddenly the king of the AIM market for about 5 minutes. And I was like,
it's brilliant.
I didn't really know what was going on.
It was worth it all for that Ken Stringfellow album, which I loved.
He's a good guy. He's lovely. A good guy.
Big star continuum there, but it was I was really fond of that record.
We put out some good records. I mean, the Hives record that you were talking about, Jasper, great record. The story with that one was that I was in a hotel in Germany about 2000, and it was Bravo, and this band came on direct in black and white, kicking their height. Hate to say I told you so. I went, what is this? It's amazing, right? So I phoned up my office, and they said, my little Pop Tones office, and they went, "Oh, we know about them, blah, blah, blah. I'll find out." So they come back and they went, they're failing. They've just put the second album out, and it sold 600 albums worldwide. And I was like, all right, okay. I went, phone the record company up and let me license it for the next 5 years, the first and second album, and send me the records. I listened to them when I got home. And I picked all the best songs, gave Burning Heart, the record company, $2,500 for 5 years ownership of the masters, and then put them out in America and Britain, sold a couple of million records. And that was the Hives. That's how we done it.
And the Hives sort of took the whole story back to the full circle, didn't it, in a way? That like obsession with like garage, like...
Well, you know why I signed them? They remind you, see when it comes in and hate to say I told you so, and it's the overdriven guitar. And I went, oh, that's like the Mary Chain. So that's why I signed it.
Yeah.
But when I put the records together, Barney, I put together, like, it was all the best ones off the first album, the best ones off the second album. And it was just like, because it was just a great record after that. Because it was like, and then also, I remember I was like, I cut the price of CDs. Do you remember that one?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it was, you think you could buy it for, what, $5 or something like that. It was, the retail price was $7.99, but we were selling so many of them that the people were ordering like 100,000. HMV were like, give us another 100,000. So they were in the shops for about $5, you know?
Yeah. Alan, we better let you go. I've got a
1348 and then I'm going to Wales, so I can't. But listen, guys, let me know.
Thank you so much, Alan. Lovely to see you. You were brilliant.
Brilliant,
lovely.
Man.
Cheers for coming on.
Take care.
All right.
Bye, mate. Bye. Okay, so thanks to our guest, Alan McGee, who has had to leave to catch a train to Wales. But wasn't he great? It was such a joy speaking with him. We are now going to just turn our attention to everything else that's new on the home page, including highlights of pieces going to the library this week, which of course Mark would normally be doing. But just to mention en passant, the losses of Trini Lopez and Wayne Fontana. I think either of us are great experts on this, but we're running 3 pieces in the Don't Fear the Reaper section this week. The first is about Wayne Fontana, whose group, the Mindbenders, were one of those Mancunian pop groups from the mid-60s who hit big in America, and they had a big hit called The Game of Love.
Is that the one that was on the Good Morning Vietnam soundtrack?
It might have been. I don't remember.
Yeah, it is. I love Game of Love, actually. Great record.
Is that on that soundtrack then?
I'm pretty sure
quite good. Yeah.
And it was also sampled geniusly by Eminem on the Marshall Mathers LP too. Yeah. For a collaboration so with Kendrick, where they sampled Game of Love and kind of totally repurposed it, and it's great.
I didn't even know that, so that's really interesting.
She doesn't love me, no, she don't love me no more. She hates my company, yes, she don't love me no more.
The piece we're running is from Record Mirror. Peter Jones essentially just previews this tour by Herman's Hermits and Wayne Fontana and the Mindbenders, which ends up like traipsing through the American South. We have another piece by June Harris that sort of tracks the tour. But it's essentially a kind of piece about the second British invasion. I mean, while it was never like the Beatles and the Stones, Herman's Hermits were absolutely massive in America, and Wayne Fontana briefly wasn't far behind. And he had a somewhat sort of checkered career. He had some issues with mental health, and he died this week. So we're saying goodbye to Wayne Fontana. We are also saying goodbye to Trini Lopez, who was, as his name might suggest, a kind of Mexican-American who was actually born in Dallas, I believe, born in 1937. So, you know, he had a long innings. And he became a kind of big star, particularly with his version of Pete Seeger's song, If I Had a Hammer, which was a folk protest song. We were talking about Seeger the other day.
Yeah. Not too long ago.
It's kind of like a sort of pseudo live version. It was a number one all over the world. I think got to number 3 in the States. He had other huge hits with like Lemon Tree and stuff. And also, I mean, there's an interesting kind of tangential connection with Oasis here because he had this Gibson, the semi-acoustic Gibson 335, the cherry red, guitar made specially for him by Gibson. And that was, as many will know, it was the guitar that became so associated with Noel Gallagher. And yeah, I mean, a lot of hits. He's not like been a household name for a while, but he was a big star in particularly in the 60s, and became a sort of Vegas-y type act in the 70s and 80s.
I had a hammer in the mall, a hammer in the inn, all over this land.
We've also lost, there's a sort of LA connection with the Seeds, who were a huge like LA garage psych band, probably a band that Alan McGee was listening to in East Kilbride in the 70s. And their guitarist, Jan Savage, who patented this kind of fuzz guitar sound on tracks like Pushing Too Hard. They were great. I loved the Seeds, I must say. They were a sort of pop psych band.
Are they the sort of like other side of the coin from the Bad Seeds then?
Well, they were Bad Seeds in their own, though. They were pretty kind of rebellious, Jasper. They were... Sky Saxon was this sort of proto-punky singer who took a lot of acid and really, really lost the plot. I mean, like Rocky Erickson did, like a lot of people in that era did. Peter Green, we were talking about the other day.
Yeah, we were talking about this the other week.
Yeah, and Sky really went off the deep end and sort of, thought he was Jesus Christ and all of that. I don't know about Jan Savage's acid intake, but they were like, I mean, they were part of a sort of scene, in a sense, that came out of Southern California. You think of bands like the Standells, although they weren't originally from California. And then Question Mark and the Mysterians up in Detroit, the Shadows of Night, and the Seeds were part of that. And I mean, they did make some, Pushing Too Hard, it's like barely even like 2.5 minutes long. I think it's one of the great sort of pop psych classics from the 60s. So
nice.
We're saying goodbye to those three, 60s stars.
You're pushing too hard, or pushing on me. You're pushing too hard, or what you want me to be. You're pushing too hard about the things you say. You're pushing too hard every night and day. You're pushing too hard on me.
We're now going to talk, we're going to do what Mark would normally be doing.
Yeah, in Mark's absence.
Not having a huge amount of time, we will just skirt through some of the highlights of the pieces, in fact, that he added, he selected and added. So I'll cover that, and then Jasper, you tell us about some of the pieces that you've added this week. So there's a piece about Death Discs from Record Mirror, David Griffiths in 1965. So he's writing about songs like the Shangri-La's Leader of the Pack, Twinkle's song Terry. We talked about Twinkle long ago with Dawn James, you may recall, Jasper.
Yeah, I do remember.
Yeah. So Death.
So this is broadly like songs about death.
Songs about sort of tragic, premature death. A girl's boyfriend dying in a motorcycle crash and so forth. There was a sort of vogue for that for them at that time. There's a great piece by the great Lillian Roxon, who Mark's talked about quite a few times on recent podcasts. This is a piece from '66 about Nashville as Music City, USA. And Nashville, not just as a place where country music is made, but where the best session men in America are, and everybody wants a sprinkling of that Nashville magic. So everybody goes to Nashville. And one forgets this. You think of it as just like the crucible of country music, but it's a piece about why like Perry Como wants to make an album in Nashville. Yeah. There's a really funny piece by Ed Jones, who recently came on board, who was a Scottish writer, connection there to Alan, but Edinburgh more than Glasgow. And it's just a piece about Roy Wood's Wizard, in Edinburgh. It's kind of like a review of a gig there, but also like he's hanging out with them backstage, and it's just very funny and kind of gossipy. We have two new great like veteran American rock critics come on board this week. Both did a lot of stuff for kind of like Fusion and Phonograph Record. One of them is Gary Kenton and the other is Dan Nuga. And so we've got the first pieces by them. One is an early Patti Smith piece.
Great. By
Gary Kenton from, I guess, just not long after Horses came out, late 75. Dan Nuga, he's started publishing interviews that he did revisiting them for Record Collector. So there's a fantastic interview he did, I believe in 85, with the producer Jerry Ragavoy, which was published in 2017. But if you're a fan of that kind of Burt Burns, Jerry Ragavoy sound, it's well worth reading. Probably the main piece that Mark would have focused on, and he took some quotes from, is that, in the current climate, it's a really, really interesting piece about MTV and why. So it's from 83, why MTV are not featuring any black videos. And you've got people like Rick James saying it's outrageous. To have a show called Music Television, this is Rick speaking to Michael Goldberg in the San Francisco Examiner, to have a show called Music Television and to ignore the black groups that's ignored since its birth is a total drag. It's like taking black people back 400 years.
Can't argue with that, really.
Yeah, I remember watching MTV when it first debuted, actually living in LA at the time, and just thinking, yeah, my God, this is sort of vanilla. It was only Michael Jackson's Billie Jean.
Yeah, I was going to say, did it take Michael Jackson?
It took the Billie Jean. I think it took the Billie Jean video. They just couldn't argue with that. So to read the vice president of MTV, Les Garland, saying at this time to Goldberg, "This is a rock and roll channel. We don't play rhythm and blues music. It's not a question of the color of the skin or the performers. That has nothing to do with it." No, I'm sure it doesn't, Les.
Yeah, that's very. I get, and it also speaks to the sort of racist history of rock and roll as a term in the States, which is interesting to read that, absolutely. Yeah.
No, it's a very thorough piece of journalism by Goldberg, as you would expect. There's an interview with Joni Mitchell. We've taken the pull quote on the homepage from that. It's classic Joni. This is 1991. I've pretty much been stricken from the history of rock and roll in America. I feel like it feels like Rick James. They think I'm a traitor. It's as if I was a Baptist and now I'm a Catholic.
Great quote.
Yeah. Joni was always complaining about the way she was treated. I sort of understood in many ways that kind of like her view was that if I'd been male, I would be as celebrated as Bob Dylan. I think that's probably true. On the other hand, it's not as if Joni isn't hailed as kind of the most brilliant woman in the history of American pop music by most people.
Yeah, I think now certainly her reputation is very,
unassailable,
unimpeachable, I think. Yeah,
exactly. But she did always have a little bit of a chip on the shoulder, and so I think that's probably it. I do want to just mention a great piece about the Cleveland scene by Kieran Tyler. It's a retrospective piece, but it's a really important piece from 2001, where he looks at, he basically says the received history of punk is that it came out of Iggy, it came out of the Velvets, it came out of New York, and then London, and all of that, and Cleveland being sort of nowheresville in the context of pop culture really gets overlooked. So he explores three bands that were really important in the kind of proto-punk era: the Electric Eels, the Styrenes, and the Mirrors. He just talks to members of those groups and really puts them in context. And they were really, really important. Sort of Pere Ubu and other bands came out of that scene. And it is a sort of area of punk history that just has always gotten overlooked, even though John Savage has always given those bands their props, But it's a really good piece.
Interesting to have then. Great.
So tell us, Jasper, about what took your fancy this week.
Well, I'll just mention a couple of things briefly. The first of which is a review of the aforementioned Hives. That's one of the reasons I put them to Alan when he was with us earlier, where he actually gets a mention in the piece. David Sinclair goes to see the Hives at the Astoria.
Yes.
And this is when they're just sort of starting their part of the Scandinavian rock and roll invasion. And Alan gets a mention. McGee was larging it up in the VIP area of the Astoria balcony, wearing his "told you so" expression as the band marched out on the stage below. And to give him his due, the Hives turned out to be one discovery that is well worth crowing about. So I
lovely.
thought it'd be funny. Pity
he wasn't here for that.
Yeah,
well, exactly. Hopefully you'll hear it when we've.
So we've talked about the Hives a bit already. So I'll move on to the year after. So that was 2002, and this is a long interview in The Wire with Richard D. James, otherwise known as Aphex Twin, who we've talked about before and who I think both of us are pretty keen on.
Love him.
As a musician and also just as a very interesting character. David Stubbs has a chat with him in The Wire, and he just comes out with some great stuff. To be honest, I'd be quite happy never to hear anything new again, he declares. Given that he was absolutely, and still is to an extent, one of the very forefront kind of innovators in electronic music, the idea of him not wanting to hear anything new. But it actually turns into a really interesting point, and he's very thoughtful and interesting about it. There's an overemphasis on the new, he mourns, especially on the part of the media who need this continuing diet of new things to write about. But if you're really serious about listening to music, there's so much great stuff that's already out there. You're not bothered about scenes. It's bad enough when you're running a label and you run into those moments where you make decisions you shouldn't be making in order to pay the staff and keep them in work. With the magazine, this need to have new things all the time is just a fiction. To my mind, it's completely wrong. It's not reflecting reality, but a need to fill space, which I think is really, really interesting and kind of a salvo towards the music press and maybe the music industry in general of this kind of drive to. And I think that's only become exacerbated by the internet, where the news cycle has accelerated so much that there's always got to be something.
But as you say, ironic coming from someone who was so up at the cutting edge, such an extraordinary kind of innovator. But I guess he gets to say that if he wants. It's not like Phil Collins saying it.
No. David Stubbs kind of makes a point. Richard D. James is perhaps the most serious and not serious person I've ever met. So I think he's always kind of playing with people a little bit in the press. He also says it's the real normal people who are the real fucking weirdos, or people considered normal, which is something that, I think speaks to his attitude of like, well, what the fuck is normal anyway? Yeah. I enjoy that.
Yes.
So it's such a great piece if you're a fan, or just for general thoughts from someone who, as you were saying, was and is at the forefront, cutting edge. And it's also, unfortunately, it's always a funny thing. Looking at it in the original publication, there's a very bizarre photo shoot with him with a stocking over his head. They've sort of done a bunch of shots. It's very funny. One of those times when you lament not getting to put pictures on.
There was always something slightly kind of malevolent and diabolical about Richard James, wasn't there? I mean, he really kind of flirted with this slightly macabre and devilish sort of alter ego.
Definitely. They get into talking about Nietzsche and about Stockhausen, and it's all sort of this big sort of philosophical picture of
great
stuff. It's great. And then lastly, I'll just mention a live review of Beyonce, just to finish up with some good pop. Queen Bey ruled the Stadium of Light in Sunderland, switching from Glamazon goddess to line-dancing Texan rodeo star. It's just, Beyonce, certainly one of the biggest pop acts, and just always someone that's put on a really big show as well, just fireworks and everything. And costume changes abound and stuff. And Stephen Dalton goes to see it for the Times in 2016. And it's just, kind of gets across just what an incredible range Beyonce actually has when you think about the massive pop songs. And then Lemonade has just come out at this point as well. Real depth to someone who is often dismissed as sort of just a pop star, but I think actually has a really good collection of different sounds and styles.
I agree. And, this is we are speaking a day after Kamala Harris was picked by Biden as his running partner, and it makes me think that Beyonce potentially has a major role to play in the coming months and years in terms of American politics. I'm not suggesting she goes into politics, but she could do her bit to defeat the forces of darkness.
Yeah, I mean, she has such a massive platform now. Yeah. Like, it would be great to see her doing a little bit more on that front. That's the sort of one thing. So hopefully, and it's, as you're mentioning, this sort of historic bit of news yesterday about Biden's running mate, Kamala Harris. We can only cross our fingers that they managed to oust the incumbent.
A polite term for the president.
Yeah. Let's not go into that.
Let's not do that. No, absolutely. Countdown to Armageddon, really, isn't it? Potentially. But listen, thanks for joining us for this episode. Thanks, Jasper, for co-hosting. Thanks in his absence to the legendary Alan McGee for being our guest today. He is terrific. And we're going to go out with the third and final clip from the Alex James audio, in which he talks about being or not being the drunkest band in British pop music. So be sure to join us in a couple of weeks. I will be away. It'll be Mark and Jasper, all things being equal, hosting another music biz legend, Vicky Wickham, who's a great pop writer in the 60s. And she managed Dusty Springfield and she managed LaBelle and she moved to New York and she's just terrific. That should be great.
Very much looking forward to
that. So Jasper and I are saying goodbye.
Indeed we are.
And here's Alex James. Goodbye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
You said you were the second, or the publicity blurb said you were the second drunkest band in the drunkest band in the world. Who was the most drunk?
Well, I think that would be indiscreet to suggest.
Oh, go on.
Well, I think it's always important. It didn't really matter as long as there was somebody drunker than me. You know, that's when you're the drunkest one, then you got problems, don't you?
I guess
you know,
so, yeah.
As long as you're not the drunkest
because you were
one,
never too drunk,
doing
obviously,
so badly.
not to remember what was going on.
When the absinthe arrived, then there was some sort of loss. I suppose a bit, but no, I don't think you know, it all does come flooding back as well when you start trying to recall it. So it's like trying to remember dreams, you know, you get a little corner of it and suddenly the whole thing's there.
I got my head shaved by a jumbo jet. It wasn't easy, but nothing is.
That was Alex James in conversation with Maureen Payton in 2007, concluding this week's Rock's Back Pages podcast. Many thanks to special guest Alan McGee. Visit the Creation 23 website at creation23.co.uk. The host was Barney Hoskins, and it was co-hosted and produced by Jasper Murison-Bowie. The Rock's Back Pages podcast is part of the Pantheon Podcast Network. You can find thousands of articles, as well as hundreds of full-length audio interviews, at rocksbackpages.com.